All right, everybody. As I said, I am super excited to have Brittani and Megan from the Wyrick Outlook on the show with us today. So, guys, thank you for being on Hey Docs. I cannot wait to dive in and ask you some insurance questions.
Yes, well,
Um,
thank you for having us. We're super excited to be here.
So, one of the ways that I love to start off the show, in the event that somebody doesn't know who you are or doesn't know much about the company, is just have you tell our audience a little bit about how you got into this and how you decided to make billing insurance your career.
Womp,
Okay.
womp, womp. I know.
No,
Yes, I'll start this off just a little bit of background about Megan and myself. We have been in the field, the orthodontic field, for it's actually been about 20 years now. We did start originally, it was our high school job. We worked at
Mhm.
the same practice, our after school job that we would go to. And then we worked there together for a while. And then I had actually moved out of the area over into the San Francisco Bay Area. Megan continued on with that practice. I actually I gravitated more towards the clinical and office management side of orthodontics. And Megan is like super creative. So she was the admin person and the creative person when it came to like marketing and stuff.
Mhm.
Several years later, even though we were not working for the same practices, Megan had moved to the Bay Area. So we were joined again. And I had hired her on to the practice that I was working with. At that time, I was in need of a financial and insurance person. And Megan's, yeah, I can do it. Now, at the time, she did not know how to do that position, but I'm going to figure it out and we're going to get through it together.
Yeah, it's
And
my
so she
motto.
actually, so I'll let her take over. She does have a funny story when it comes to
Oh,
how,
love
how
it.
we got started with the insurance.
Yeah. I think with this position, I don't know anyone goes into orthodontics wanting to be the finance and insurance coordinator. I think the majority of people try to avoid it like the plague. And that was
Mhm.
me. I avoided it because it was intimidating. It was something that there's so many things that come with that position am I doing it right? Is this how I should be doing it? And so on. And I avoided it. And then when Brittany was like, hey, look, I really need this sort of position in the office, I was like, all right, I'll jump in, I'll figure it out, I'll do it. So what would happen was I would be working through accounts, calling my mom. So our mom she's the one that actually got us into orthodontic. And I would be calling her like in the back room, hey, can you help me figure out this insurance benefit? Hey, can you help me figure out this EOB? And so she was like my brains for the first few months of me starting
Sure.
out as an insurance coordinator. And then it was like, holy cow, I don't have any experience. The majority of people probably don't have the opportunity to call their mom and say, how do I do this? Or
Right.
call the previous employee and say how to do this. And so I told Brittany, I was like, look, there's a need for this.
Yes.
Somebody needs to step in and start training finance and insurance coordinators. And so that's where it just snowballs from there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. And I just have to say, you guys are meeting such a need. It's hard in
Mhm.
offices to find somebody that wants to do it and can do it well, understands what they're doing, and then is there for the long haul. And as we all know, it doesn't take but just a couple months to get things behind, and
Yeah,
it can become a very big deal very quickly. So
for sure.
I love that you guys have stepped in and are filling this space. And I know you have been a real godsend to a lot of my clients who have used you. So thanks for
Yeah.
seeing the need and saying we can fill that.
I'm glad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we were a part of we had joined a lot of Facebook groups, and then people were asking the same questions that we had, the same reason that we were on those same sites. And so being that we had worked in the same practice together, Megan was getting more comfortable with it. We were both getting more comfortable with it, seeing what questions people were asking, figuring out those questions. And then we would just break on our lunch hour and we started just hammering out just game plans. When we would take our kids, keep them busy, bring them to Chuck E. Cheese and just sit brainstorm for several hours coming up with game plans. And then that's how a lot of those like free downloads and stuff that we
Mhm.
have currently, that's how they got there.
Oh, I love it.
Good old
It's
Chuck E. Cheese.
So let's talk about because the whole reason, besides the fact that I just love you guys, but I wanted you on the show is because this is a tough subject. I have to have a conversation with every single one of my doctors. Are we going to take net insurance or not? Are we going to be in network or not? Are we going to be registered or not? And we all know you have to be registered regardless. There's this whole conversation, and you want to leave it at that, but it really isn't that. It's so much more. And it even sometimes goes into the type of patients that come into your practice, depending upon the plans that you're on and whatnot. So I'm wondering if you guys would mind talking a little bit about, say, challenges or maybe pain points that you're seeing orthodontic practices encounter when it comes to insurance billing. And I know, like, we've only got 45 minutes to unpack this. So I'm not expecting you to give like step by step, but just what are some things that you're seeing and you felt like maybe even within starting your business and bringing this service to practices that you were able to meet those needs and negate those pinch points?
So one, I think, is definitely there's training, right?
Mm.
There's not really any sort of training that goes on within this position. I think we've filled that need, which is great. So the majority of offices, even when they're starting out a practice or they're taking over a practice, the previous doctor is retiring and so on, they generally had somebody in our position for years and years. And so there's nobody else that really can step in and fill in. And so that's where I think the courses really help. Insurance is just ever evolving. And so it's never a right or wrong answer. I wish it was. And I say this all the time in the course, but there's no yes or no. There's no right or wrong answer. There's preferred ways of doing it, but that doesn't mean that it's right or wrong. I think those are the pain points, is that it's just really offices struggle that they can't, there's not a yes or no answer. You're never going to have that with insurance. Yeah.
And I always, very similar to what you say when I'm coaching with doctors, is I think we so desperately want that black and white answer. We so desperately want to know this is the code you use, or this is the exact way you do this. And there, it is just not that way. Even to within, you can be dealing with Delta of California and Delta of Minnesota and Delta of Colorado. They're all Deltas, but they all do very different things.
Right.
Yeah.
For sure.
And you're like, how does that make sense? And
Yeah.
how over all of these years, probably the one consistent thing in orthodontics has been the fact that we deal with insurances. How is it that it's never been really, truly streamlined with all of these insurance companies out there?
I know. I wish. And that's, if I had a way, even I always tell Brittany that, I was like, man, if I could figure out a way to either get offices in network with everyone or out of network with everyone, or just know who you're in network with, right?
Oh gosh. Yes.
It would help so much, but there's no one area that practices can go to and figure it out. So it's really combing through all of the insurance companies, figuring out plan specific details and so on. I like to relate it to almost like orthodontic treatment in a way, right? Every patient has their own customized plan that doctors are specializing in. And so it's the same thing with insurance. Every plan is so different. So just because it's Delta California doesn't mean that it's going to be the same for every single patient. It can be policy specific. Yeah.
Yes. And we do a lot of training on that too with our clients, telling them, hey, it really is on you and your team to understand these policies so you can bill to the best of your ability. And again, why I love what you guys have done and stepping into this industry and saying, hey, we can come alongside you and your practice, and we're going to take on that ownership of knowing what's going on here and make sure that's not something you have to worry as much about. There still, I'm sure, has to be some oversight there, but you guys can keep that train going, knowing that you have the right parameters in place to keep that insurance train on the track. We'll say there. So I would love to talk a little bit about coding. And I always tell my docs, you got to think about insurance. It's very one-dimensional, one code, one treatment. But we all know that it isn't. It may be one code, but there's multiple levels of treatment, right? And there are different things that we may be doing in our offices that could maybe allow us to choose different codes depending upon the type of treatment that we're doing or what we're doing there. So I'm kind of curious because I know that even in this last year, we had some big changes go on with they decide they're taking out one code and we're using another code. And let's talk a little bit about that and what you guys are seeing, maybe changes in the past that maybe people should be aware of. And if you've heard or know of anything coming up that we need to just have on our horizon to be paying attention to.
Okay. Yeah. So I think one of the biggest changes that happened over the last year, and something Brittany and I spoke at last Ortho Evolution,
Hmm.
was the removal of the interceptive codes. And that took practices by a storm, right? It was very unsettling, even for me to figure it out. I was like, what are practices going to do? What's going to happen? And again, there's not really a right or wrong answer to this. I wish there was. Their majority of practices are either using the limited code or the comprehensive code, the D8070. But there are practices that are saying if I use D8070, which is the comprehensive transitional dentition, which would replace that
Hmm.
uh, transitional phase one treatment, is future treatment going to be blocked? We've seen that happen. We've seen policies say, hey, orthodontics is once per lifetime. So if you bill out a comprehensive code for phase one, you won't be able to use the comprehensive code for the second phase. Now that's the minority. It's not the majority. And
Yes. And I just want you to say that one more time. That is the minority.
yes, it is the minority, not the majority. I always tell practices if they're heavily in network, you'll want to use D8070. One, it's going to increase the contracted rate that you generally have as opposed to using any of the limited codes. Um, but if you're billing out, let's say, $3,000 for your phase one 8070 and the treatment fee or the lifetime maximum is $1,500, you're generally using the full benefit anyways. So there's no worry about blocking it for phase two because you've already used it up.
And I don't know how you guys advise on this, but I always tell my patients, I think gone are the days where you should be holding back on using a benefit. Nowadays, employers, especially big ones, they're changing up their insurance plans easily every 3 years. And
Yeah.
so if you're thinking, "Oh, I don't want to tap into their benefit, we'll wait for full treatment." There's a good chance that you could just altogether lose their benefit versus you using it on your early phase and then probably by the time they're ready for their second phase of treatment, they could very well have a whole new insurance and have a whole new potential benefit that you could then use. You know,
100%.
just throwing that out there for when you hear people say that, don't worry about maxing out the benefits. And was
Yeah.
my thought there.
Yeah. Don't save a benefit for future use for sure.
Yes, yes,
They
yes.
have it, use it.
Yeah, for sure. And then I think we're using some codes that maybe some of my young doctors may not know a lot about. And what you have to do is hopefully get in, whether it's myself or you guys, or lean on your peers out there. But you really have
Mhm.
to understand how best to. I always say sometimes it's not fair in our industry because we're relegated to just a few codes. Where if you're on the dental side, heck, you could bill for raising your finger. No, just kidding. But like you can bill
Right.
for everything. And when you
Right.
get to build this up where for us, we've got these very limited codes and we don't have a lot of direction on how we should use it. And so you really have to think about which is the best code to what you were saying, using a code that maybe a D8070 maybe allows us when we're looking at this bigger picture to not have to write off so much of what our
Hmm.
treatment fee
Hmm.
would be. And when I'm working with clients and I talk to them and I say, hey, if you're going to be a network, if we're going to choose to be a network, I want you to view it as if every single write off is a marketing expense. Because
Hmm.
technically, what you're doing is you're paying to be found on the insurance's website. And every
Right.
time you have to follow that fee schedule
Yeah.
and you have to write off maybe the difference of $500 between your fee and theirs, if you can just mentally put your head around that was a marketing expense that got me that patient versus, oh my gosh, I'm losing all this money. I think it helps you put it in perspective a little bit more. I don't know what your guys'
Right.
thoughts are on that, but that's the way I view it with
Yeah. And
doctors.
that's a good That's a good point. Now, I will say, after a year or two of being in network, running those marketing reports and making sure that patients are truly finding that
Yes.
on the insurance company's website.
Yeah, because otherwise,
Yeah.
and that is exactly the follow-up to that is exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
I usually say by about year 3, get out of them. You're
Yeah.
still gonna get their benefit. There's just a few that are a little picky about sending you benefits versus the patient, but
It's the minority, not the majority.
Yes, yes, exactly, exactly. I know I've heard some rumbling about additional codes changing. Do you guys have any secret insight you could give us or anything you've heard so far about
Not
anything else changing?
not that I've heard yet. I'd be curious to hear what you've heard, but no, I haven't heard anything. I haven't heard anything.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Okay. Good. We'll talk about that off air. So
Okay.
I don't get zinger emails like, Jill, you said.
Right.
So what are some things that you guys are advising? How do you advise practices that are doing a lot of custom treatment? And I know this can be a little bit of a hot button,
Mhm,
and there are lots of ways to go about this. And we may
mhm,
even differ just a little bit on how we do this, but how are you advising when you've got a practice that is doing something beyond basic metal braces and they're trying to figure out, okay, how do I get what I need for the type of treatment that I want to do for my patient? Do you guys mind
mhm.
diving into that really sticky subject for a little bit?
Yeah, no, it's a
Yeah, that's
totally yeah, it's a great question. We get it asked all the time, especially in the course, "Hey, how am I billing for Invisalign or Spark
Hmm.
or all of these
Hmm.
other treatment options?" And if you're in work, that's pretty much the only time that it really matters if you need
Yes.
to be
Yes.
upcharging for these things.
Yep. Yep.
And so we recommend one, having it listed on the patient's financial contract that you're charging an extra amount for whatever treatment that option is. And then also listing it on the claim as well. So if you're using, it's a comprehensive treatment, we're doing aligners, we would have D8080 charged $5,000, Invisalign upcharge of $1,000, right? Total treatment fee 6,000. That way, then it lists when the EOB comes back, it'll show if you're able to bill that to the patient or not, right?
Mhm.
And it'll just have keep everything very consistent on uh, what you were upcharging for.
That's great. And I think what I hope people hear is that there are ways around to bill for the treatment that you're wanting. And it isn't like we're saying,
Mhm,
hey, everybody in your practice gets upcharged. It's just usually your contract. You guys tell me if I'm wrong here, but with your insurance company, is you're agreeing to provide put their braces on, do their treatment, give them a set of retainers. That's
mhm,
usually, and your obligation is normally basic metal braces, just
mhm,
a fixed, nothing above and beyond. And I always say, if you are a practice, and a lot of my startups and a lot of doctors out there are saying, hey, I want to be able to give them the option to do a custom bracket or to do an aligner system. The treatment is going to be the same, but
mhm,
I'm going to allow them a different modality. I think, like you're saying, being really transparent with that and saying, hey,
mhm,
your Delta is they're definitely going to cover this. You're going to get your benefit. We're going to cover the
mhm.
basic metal braces. We can do that, but you do have the option to do it
Right.
with Invisalign. And I'm just going to pass on the lab fee. And I even just suggest, and I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I even suggest just having the patients sign off on it. Yes,
Yeah.
I understand that I'm electing to pay for something additional. I know my
Yes.
insurance is covering the treatment that I'm having done, but I'm electing to do something above and beyond what is the basic component there.
Correct. Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
good. I always love to just hear that we're all on the same page, number
Yeah.
one, but because I get asked this all the time too. And I'm like, I know they're getting asked this. How do we handle this? How should we
I
do
will
it?
say that the only offices that do really struggle with this are ones that are in network. So, as mentioned before, right?
Yeah.
Now, on the flip side to that, if you're really struggling with that and saying, hey, I don't want to do that, I don't want to add it to the contract, I don't want to show the patient the extra charge, whatever the situation is, I would recommend just looking at getting out of network. I am
Yes.
huge on being out of
Yes.
network,
Agreed.
because you're not shackled to the insurance company.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yes, it may have worked for the first few years while you're in getting started or getting your practice up and
Mhm.
going. But after that, the majority of patients are coming to you because word of mouth, general dentist referral, not because you're in network.
Yeah. And I'm just going to throw this out there. I was just at a conference with Oliver Gellis from Orthophy, and he and has collaborated with Gage, and they actually have got some new data that shows that being in network is not a benefit to practice. We've always known like
Yeah.
you could be losing money, but that to your point, that it is not, that they now have the data to show that it is not bringing
Oh,
in more
kudos.
patients. I know, and I'm like,
Nice
I'm like,
job.
yes, I know.
Yeah.
I'm like, Oliver, send me that. I'm gonna put
Yeah.
that out everywhere because I
Yes.
think that's what we need to know. It's that fear of unknown. Well, is there any data that tells us how do we know for sure that we aren't getting patients? And the other thing that I would say to that for anybody who's questioning that too is, again, if you're a startup, you'll hear me a lot of times say you might need it in the beginning. Think of it as a marketing expense. But as you move out, if you're just really good, as you were saying, with pulling your reports and really paying attention to where your patients are coming from, why would, if you really feel like you need it, take that amount of write off every year and put it into online marketing where you can at least
Mhm.
see see
Yes.
the return on
Right.
it there.
Yeah.
So how do you guys help? I know you guys do a lot of training. You put on some really amazing seminars. Let's talk a little bit about how you help train up and maybe even partner with offices when they have decided they don't want to bring in maybe a financial coordinator. Let's talk a little bit about that. I think very
Yeah.
wonderful spot that you guys have dropped into. Definitely a need for our practices.
Yeah. So it fell into our lap. It wasn't something we intended to do,
Mhm.
but basically after COVID, we had doctors reaching out to us left and right saying, "Hey, you just trained my team or my insurance coordinator, and now they're not coming back,
Yeah.
or I don't have them anymore with the practice. And so can you just do it for us?" And we're like, "Sure. Yeah, we'll do it for you." And we have a team of expert financial coordinators behind us that are basically logging into practices all throughout the country every day, multiple practices, not just
Mhm.
one. And so they're logging in and just being that financial coordinator, verifying the insurance, sending out claims, following up on the claims, posting payment, everything that a in-office financial coordinator would
Mhm.
do, but just virtual. So it's really just a virtual kind of financial
Extension.
coordinator.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's an
Yeah.
extension of the practice. So everything stays within their practice management software and
One of our offices
one
actually,
designated person.
Yeah,
yeah,
which is
one of our
great.
offices even has their virtual financial coordinator on their website.
I
So,
love it. Like a little caricature or something, or
no, like she took a picture and
okay.
said, "Here's my picture," but it had like virtual financial
Oh,
coordinator.
I love that. And this is what I really have appreciated about what you guys have done in setting up your business and being able to provide this services. You've heard me talk about this before, this outsourcing of employees, and I call it our plastic employees out there where we don't have to anymore within our offices have these. There has to be Jenny that comes into the office and sits in her little room and talks to insurance all day long. Like we can, and that's the beauty. I think COVID helped us with this, but we
Mhm.
can think outside of the box and we can think of different ways to still meet the needs of our patients in our office, but it doesn't have to be in this traditional way that it has always been done and where
Yeah.
we dedicate an 8 by 8 office to somebody sitting in there yelling at insurance companies all day. Not that's what you guys do, but you know what I'm saying though?
Right.
Like, and I really appreciate, and I hope that our listeners also hear this too, that if whether it's you or maybe you had a team member that's saying, I need a change and I can't be in the office anymore. And you're like, can I make this work? And I'm going to say, yes, you can. Almost every position. There are a few that we cannot. But if we're willing to do the work and figure out the logistics of it, there
Mhm.
are a lot of things that can be done in more of a remote environment now.
For sure. For sure. Yes. And I definitely agree with you. COVID opened up the doors for that. And I think a lot more doctors are open minded to having remote employees, whether it's outsourcing it or having one of their team members
Mhm.
now just go remote has been a great opportunity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. So let's talk about your seminars. How often are you guys doing your seminars? Is it usually online or in person?
Yeah. So we're doing them all online. None are in person yet. We've talked about it, but I don't know. I just like virtual
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, I'm right there
And
with you.
we thought about it too, just from, I don't know, I guess me being an office manager. And then it was like coming from thinking it from the doctor's perspective.
Mhm.
And I'm like, sometimes you just want the training and you want to be able to provide that to your employee versus having them blocking them out on a Thursday to fly out there. And then you have
Yes,
flight
yes.
expenses and then you have hotel expenses and
Mm.
you're paying for their time. We'll just do it virtual, keep it simple for everybody. And that's why we just stuck to the virtual thing.
I love it.
Money, saves money,
Yeah.
and it's just easier.
And honestly, I think that's the future of a lot of I think that's where things are going. Everybody
Yeah.
values time above everything else right now. And we all
Yes.
need more time.
Yes. Yes.
If you don't have to be on an airplane, great.
Right.
So
So the
so is
majority of our courses we are doing twice a year. Yeah.
okay. Okay, great. Great. So if people want to if somebody's listening and they're like, "Okay, I think I could either use their help and just being an extension of my practice, or I think I'm going to bring somebody new on and train them." What's the best way they get a hold of you guys? What's the best way for them to interact and find out more information?
Of course, it would be our website just to get a good idea of what we do and what courses that we do offer. Of course, social media, and
Mhm.
do also attend several different conferences throughout the year. And we're not at all of them, that's for sure. But there are a handful of them that we do attend. And so you can always check out our booth and come up and hang out and say hi to us.
We have a ton of free resources on social media as well as our website. So anybody
Great.
looking for just quick, easy information, it's all on there.
Yeah, perfect. Do you want to just throw us out those handles so we know where to find you?
Yeah. It's the Wyrick Outlook, basically Facebook, Instagram, and our website. Yeah.
Great, great. Guys, it has been wonderful having you on. And I've been really excited to have you because I am a nerd with insurance. And I'm like, I know it doesn't get the spotlight that it needs, like for what, because it is such an important part. What, like you said, it may not be being in network, but understanding how to get the most out of it and being able to help your patients utilize the benefits that they have is, I think, just so important to getting patients to say yes to treatment. So thanks for sharing your knowledge and for seeing a need in our industry and saying, "Yeah, we're gonna be the ones that are gonna tackle that."
Yes. Thank you so much for having us. This has been a blast.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is, before I let you guys off, there is one little thing that I like to do at the end of Hey Docs is just a little tiny speed round. And are you guys up for the challenge?
Yeah,
We
shoot.
are.
All right. All right. Coffee or tea?
Beer.
Copy.
Yes, I love it. I like
coffee.
no,
No, it's
it
is coffee.
Oh, that's awesome. Favorite book?
The Giving Tree.
Good one.
What? What? Um, I would probably say your best. My full book library is all business books, so boring, but
Hey,
But
that's all right.
that is a
Uh,
great. We talk
that
about
is
that book all the time.
that's mine right over there. If you could see my books over there, same thing. It's all business.
good.
Any favorite outdoor activity?
Camping.
Kayaking.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
All right. If you could be remembered for one thing, what would it be?
Brittany?
Be easy to be around. I like big,
Oh,
easy people, so I want to be remembered that way too.
that's great.
I would say to be giving, right? Giving more than you take.
Yeah. Oh, love that one. And then final one, best piece of advice you've been given.
Oh, I do have a good one. I basically to be aware or to teach yourself to respond versus react. And I
Mm.
found that one just being like super aware of that, like always having that in the back of my mind, I just feel has helped me out a lot and gotten me pretty far, I think.
Huh? That's a good one. That's a good one.
Mine comes from our mom, and it's actually a Dr. Phil quote. She was a huge Dr. Phil fan back in the day, but it's you teach people how to treat you.
Oh, that's deep
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
That's good.
I
And
guess for anything,
yeah,
business, relationships, anything. So.
it's true. That's true. It has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for being on Hey Docs, and can't wait to see you around and talk more insurance.
Great. Thank you. All right.
All right.
Bye.
Bye,
Thank you. Thank
guys.
you.